What's going on, guys? Kun69 here. How you guys doing today? If you haven't guessed it already, this is going to be my first 2.4.2 monk build guide. This bad boy right here is the LTK monk, more specifically the lashing tail kick monk. It's a build that is designed to do torment speed farming, so it's not for GRs, it's not for, like, droop GRs, it's not for solo pushing. It's a build that is designed to effectively farm Torment 11, Torment 12, and Torment 13. I wouldn't say it's the best build for farming T10 because, Wave of Light setups are probably slightly better because, the HP of the mobs isn't that crazy, so Wave of Light can just delete the entire screen, the one-punch monk. But the second you step into Torment 11, 12, and 13, the monster's HP gets higher and higher and higher, and you just need an attack that does more damage. So you can see here, it's not the biggest AoE, the little kick I'm doing. Okay, it's only 15 yards, so it's nowhere near close to the Wave of Light, which is like 40 yards or something insane. It's only 15 yards. It does shoot out a little fireball, which does kind of sometimes go around and cleave stuff and break things and randomly get you legendaries and things. But what it does do is anything in that range, anything that gets hit by that fireball, or anything that's getting hit by your kick, is going to die extremely fast, even in the, the higher torments. Okay, Torment 13 is the equivalent of a GR60. So, I don't know how many of you guys have done, GR60 in that. I would hope the majority of you have, but you guys should know that GR60, the monsters do take a bit of a beating, especially when you're in a 4-man group. What I did is I've tested this build, dropped my Paragons off, and effectively, what we're doing is we're just going around and just wrecking rifts. And even without my Paragons on, this build still cleans up. So it's actually really viable. I think it's just going to be the best builds, hands down, for monks to farm, the higher torments. Obviously, I'm not saying, okay, anyone can probably clear T13 with this build. You just got to remember, you don't want to go too far and too high too fast. Effectively, if it's taking you ages to kill stuff and it's really slow, it's going to be more efficient to go down in torment levels. So it's always better to go down and do faster clears. You want to be averaging at least, like, you want to clear the rift in under 7 minutes. Like, that is the longest time you want to spend in a rift. So if you're doing 7-minute clears, that's pretty generous. Okay, then you can consider going up to the higher levels, and eventually you'll get to the point where it doesn't matter how high you go, everything will just get one shot, and that's when you go into Torment 13. So just remember that. Alright, so a lot of you guys are probably wondering how the build works. It's using the SWK set as a multiplier, and you're using the Guyana Kashu helmet to basically make these really meaty fireballs that go around and one-shot everything. If you guys don't know, they actually changed the Guyana Kashu helmet in the latest patch, and effectively the fireballs scale with the SWK set multipliers, and they scale with all the other multipliers now. So GNK, is now actually real. Your fireballs that come out of your helmet do more damage than the actual kick. Obviously, the AoE on the fireball is only about 10 yards when you hit an enemy, so it's not as large. But the important thing to know is, okay, the fireballs do proc area damage. They do an AoE whenever they hit a target, and they do insane amount of damage. I think it's like 1400% now, so it's pretty crazy. So your damage is coming from just going around LTKing. You have to maintain Sweeping Wind the whole time. This is probably the most annoying thing about the build. So Sweeping Wind, every time you attack, it consumes a stack of Sweeping Wind, and you'll see there I've dropped Sweeping Wind right now, and I'm trying to press it. Boom, Sweeping Wind's up. I'm running away, and okay, Sweeping Wind can be a little bit annoying to maintain with this build, especially when you're doing less damage. The more times you have to attack, the higher chance you have of actually dropping Sweeping Wind. A really important thing about when you're kind of gearing this build, you're going to need lots of crit. If you do not have lots of crit, then your lashing tail kick will not crit that often, and it's not going to maintain your Sweeping Wind that often. So it's pretty. It's kind of annoying. It's one of those things that about the build that I wish really Blizzard didn't. I wish they fixed the Karisho's Soul Belt, so you didn't have to constantly reapply Sweeping Wind every time you're going around attacking things. But that's just the way it is. So it's really important. Maintain Sweeping Wind the entire time you're playing. Otherwise, it's pretty simple. Just dash around to get to targets. Obviously, you got Inkyom, so you can just pretty much spam dash the whole time, providing you're killing elites. You're using Blinding Flash with the laws of Seth in your cube. So, you know, whenever your spirit's getting low, you just spam Blinding Flash. Also, you can get the Blinding Flash buff, which is the damage buff. 29%. It's pretty real because there's not that much additive damage in this build outside of the GNK and the boots. But yeah, it's a pretty simple build. Spam Blinding Flash, maintain Sweeping Wind, dash to get around, just use Epiphany on cooldown, and then LTK stuff in the face, just kick stuff in the face, and you'll just go around, you're cleaning up. Obviously this build wouldn't be possible without all the new changes. Let's go over the items and show you guys basically how it works, what you need to use, and how to gear it. So let's go over the gear first. As you can see here, we're using the updated Scarbringer. So this is in 242, now has some orange text on the bottom, which effectively makes it viable and a usable item. And this item is mandatory for the build. You cannot get away without this item. Okay, so if you read the orange text, the damage of Lashing Tail Kick is increased by 300% to the first 5 to 7 enemies hit. If you can get a 7 roll, that's brilliant. If you get a 5 roll, it's really not the end of the world. Just means you're going to clear density slightly faster if you get a 7. Okay, an important thing to note, the Scarbringer, okay, also multiplies your Guyana Nakashu helmet. We'll get to that in a bit. So this item here, you need it, okay? You need it. It doesn't work without it. We're using an Ingium, okay? So Ingium, this is my favorite item for doing all my Torment Speed builds. Your cooldowns are reduced by 10 seconds for 15 seconds after killing an elite pack. It's what allows, to basically spam dash. And without this item, I honestly don't think the build is that viable for doing speeds. But early game, it's not necessarily needed. You can obviously change that out to a Vengeful Wind and put like a Furnace in the cube, and then you have a really hard hitting build. It just has a lot less mobility, but I mean, it's definitely not mandatory. But I mean, if you want to be really fast and you want to keep up with your group, then you're going to want to have the Ingium on. We are then using the Riveria Dancers. So this is a old item that was basically useless because LTK was trash, but now it's amazing. So if you look at the bottom, so Lashing Tail Kick attacks 50% faster. Okay, that's a multiplier to your attack speed. It doesn't add with attack speed. It multiplies the animation, speed, and deals up to 300% increased damage, which is also a multiplier. And the Riveria Dancers, they also multiply your Guyana Nakashu. As I said before, it's the same. Every single item that changes LTK also changes your GNK, which is Guyana Nakashu for short. Alright, in terms of, pants and stuff, we're using a full SWK set, so I've got the SWK pants, SWK's chest, SWK's shoulders, SWK's gloves, and the SWK's amulet. And then we've got a Ring of Royal Grandeur in the cube to make it the 6th set. So if you look at the SWK set here, you can see your damage taken is reduced by 50% while Sweeping Wind is active. So just another reason to maintain Sweeping Wind. I mean, everything basically relates, to Sweeping Wind with this build. So the 4th set, it's pretty irrelevant. It doesn't really do anything for us. Effectively what it does, because we have Vengeful Wind, every second it spawns a decoy that does 10,000% weapon damage, which is, it's pretty bad, honestly, because we don't have any multipliers to make it actually good. So it's just kind of there going away. But in terms of your total damage output, this would be only like 1%. I mean, that's being generous. It basically does nothing. Okay, the 6th set. This is where the money is. Lashing Tail Kick, Tempest Rush, Wave of Light. Consume a stack of Sweeping Wind to deal 3,000% increased damage. And this is obviously a separate multiplier to all the rest. So it's insane. It's not just adding with the boots. It's not just adding with the Skybringer. These items are all multiplying with each other. And this is how you get to the crazy amount of damage. And at the same time, it's, the annoying thing about the build. It basically, you use a Sweeping Wind, and it goes up, and every time you attack, you can see it goes down and down and down. And it's a battle to keep your Sweeping Wind stacks the whole time. Because you need them. If you don't have the Sweeping Wind up, then you're not getting your 3,000% damage, and you're also losing out on your 50% damage reduction. So it's just a battle to keep the Sweeping Wind stacks up. But that's how you're doing damage. You've got these multipliers, which are all multiplying to your LTK, and then they're multiplying your Guyana Nakashu. Let's go to the GNK. So this is the item that I keep talking about. Guyana Nakashu. Okay, so straight away you'll notice it has Dex Vit, crit, and then you'll see there, increases LTK damage by up to 100%, well, just 100% straight. Okay, that is damage increased by skills. So this is technically going into an additive pool with your boots, with things like momentum, etc. But it's still good. So you want to have a roll, as high as possible. The roll you're really looking at, though, so mine's not the best. Okay, so if you look at the orange text down the bottom, which this has got revamped entirely, so it used to be complete trash. and now it's effectively your hardest hitting ability, and it's where the majority of your damage is coming from. Lashing Tail Kick releases a piercing fireball that deals 1,291 or up to 1,400% damage as fired to enemies within 10 yards on impact. So this is crazy. This is effectively what's doing all your damage because it scales from all the multipliers. It can be a little bit buggy. I've noticed sometimes it just doesn't. You see there, I attacked twice. It shot out one fireball. I don't know. I think it has something to do with my attack speed or what the deal is, but it's just slightly buggy. But regardless, they made it scale with area damage, and they made it scale with all the multipliers, and they made it the biggest hitting thing. So when you see the big crits, it's coming from your GNK. That's all your damage. So it's kind of like almost worth optimizing around fire damage, but it's really 50-50 whether you want consistent damage or you want really big hitting fireballs. Okay, so now let's go to my braces. We're using Nemesis braces. These bad boys here, they're as old as the hills. You can see here, shrines and pylons spawn an enemy champion. So effectively, when you click a shrine or a pylon, you get an extra elite pack. Elite pack gives you globes, gives you loot, gives you death breaths. Just means you clear the rift faster. I feel like this is mandatory, and especially because you're the monk. If you're playing in a 4-player group doing torment speed farms, you can just dash about like a madman, and you can just get to all those shrines and just click them instantly without having to swap your braces. You can swap these out and use like Wasichian arm guards, like the movement speed braces. But I feel like the amount of time it takes to swap and everything, and the speed bonus, which you don't really need because you're just spamming dash the whole time anyway, it's really just not worth it. So I don't know, I just use NEMS. And obviously I've rolled physical. You can go physical or fire, it doesn't really matter because you're split between physical damage and fire damage, because we're not actually running a fire damage build. You'll see there. We're doing physical here, and then the GNK is doing fire damage. It's kind of weird. We then have SWK shrines. You want to have a one like this, crit, and then, the elemental type damage. As I said before, it can be fire or physical. It doesn't really matter too much. I prefer physical because it gives you a more consistent build. In terms of rings here, we've got Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. So this thing is insane. This just is really good for downtime during Ingium. So when your Ingium's down, effectively it's a good way to get your cooldowns back, so you can maintain your epiphany, so you can keep dashing really fast, and so you can basically spam blind. This is technically not necessary. If you're killing elites, you could swap this out to say a COE. You could swap it out to whatever you want, really. You could even change the build a bit and use like Focus Restraint, for example, to get a crazy damage boost. But personally, I like this ring a lot, and it just makes life a lot easier. And we've got a Bane of the Trapped in there, so that's just straight up Bane of the Trapped, 50% increased damage. Obviously, this is a pretty high Bane of the Trapped, not the best, but yours might be a little bit lower, but it doesn't matter. This is another multiplier for your thing. So this is giving me a 1.5 multi on top of all these other multipliers, so it's insane. The secondary procs the primary effect. Okay, we're then using an Avarice Band. A lot of people seem to misunderstand what the Avarice Band is about. Okay, it's not really for picking up gold. It's actually for picking up the globes, the progression orbs. So as you're going around killing elites really fast, okay, Avarice Band will pick up those progression orbs like the second they drop. The second they drop and you even move a single inch, you've got a pickup radius of like this large, right? And you actually have to be in close range to kill the elites. Therefore, every time you just run that first step to dash off, you pick up the globes. Okay, the amount of time you spend going 1 globe, 2 globe, 3 globe, then dashing off, okay, this is what makes it worth it. Obviously, you could have so many things. You could have Stone of Jordan, you could have COE, you could have so many other rings that increase your damage. But Avarice Band just saves you time on picking up globes, and then on top of that you get the bonus of getting gold. And gold's actually gold in the new 242 is not really a big deal because it's actually really easy to empower rifts this season. I don't really like that. I kind of like the gold sync that they had, but effectively they've changed the scaling, and if you run a Boon of the Hoarder and an Avarice Band, you are never going to have any issues with gold. It's pretty insane. And then our necklace here, we are using Bane of the Powerful. This is just a straight. So they actually updated this, so you get 20% multiplicative damage output, and then you get 15% elite damage, and you get 15% reduction. So it's a really, really just solid gem for survivability and damage output, and it's just up the whole time because, you're going around killing elites really, really fast. But that Oh, no. We've still got one more, guys. One more. Kairisho Soul. This bad boy right here. This thing here I've been crying about for the past few days, or weeks, months, I don't know. I really wish this was changed. Effectively, the reason we use this belt here, so Sweeping Wind gains 2 stacks every second. It does not deal damage to enemies. Okay, most of the time this is inactive because you're in melee range, you know, kicking stuff. So your Sweeping Wind's hitting things, right? It's not active. But you're gonna drop Sweeping Wind a lot, okay? Like, I mean, almost without a doubt, every second rift, you're gonna drop Sweeping Wind at some point. Okay, when Sweeping Wind is down, you're gonna then want to get it back up. Now, how do you get it back up? Because every time you use LTK, you know, it consumes a stack and it eats it up, and it's really, you know, it's kind of annoying. The way it works is you just pop Sweeping Wind and you just kind of run off, just run away from the enemies, get it to like 5 stacks plus, and then run back in and keep attacking. And then the dream is that every time you kick, you know, you're gonna crit something and you're gonna get your stack back or go up a stack. But this is basically just to, you know, have a foolproof way of getting your stacks back up. If you don't run this belt, it can be quite annoying to play, and it's really hard to get your stacks back up. It's just a, you know, quality of life thing. In my opinion, I've said this once, I'll say it again, this belt should just say, Sweeping Wind gains 2 stacks every second. That's all, and then they shouldn't have that second, you know, line of text there that just completely ruins it. You know, because it's just totally counterintuitive having a belt that, you know, it's, when you're in melee range, it doesn't work. And, you know, every single ability apart from Hand of Yta and, you know, using Turkin's Gaze helmet to make wave of light range, every single other rune is going to be, you know, consuming that stack, and it just doesn't make sense. But whatever, that's the way Blizzard done it. One day they'll change it, boys. The dream. Alright, so now let's go over skills. So we are using Lashing Tail Kick, Sweeping Armada. So now a lot of you guys are going to be like really confused as to why we're using Sweeping Armada. Because, you know, there's other runes like Vulture Claw Kick, which is pound for pound without any multipliers, the most damage a monk can deal per spirit spent, outside of Exploding Palm, obviously. You know, so it's like one of the best runes in the game, right? Vulture Claw Kick. Okay, it is simply because the reason we're using Sweeping Armada is simply because it can maintain your Sweeping Wind stacks like 10 times easier than Vulture Claw Kick can. In terms of dropping your stacks, you're going to drop your stacks 2 or 3 times as much using this than you will Sweeping Armada. Okay, yes, this does more damage. Yes, it's fire, so it means you can stack 1 elemental damage. You can run Vulture Claw Kick if you want. It's just really annoying to run. This is the less triggering one, Sweeping Armada. Okay, it just changes it to physical, gives it a 15-yard radius, so instead of a 10-yard radius, you have a 15-yard radius. And it's just a lot easier to maintain your Sweeping Wind stacks. Early game, feel free to mess around with Vulture Claw Kick when you need that extra damage boost. But effectively, once you get like a little bit of gear and, you know, just optimize your stuff a tiny bit, Sweeping Armada is going to be better, just hands down in my opinion. The mantra I'm using right now is Mantra Conviction Annihilation. That is purely for the 30% movement speed. It's more for if you're playing in groups, okay? Giving your party members 30% movement speed is huge, right? It means the barbs and stuff, they can run faster, the Wish Doctors can run faster, all that stuff, and they will love you for this. Okay, early game, when you're lower Paragon and you're pretty weak, Mantra Salvation Agility, without a doubt. It's going to mean you're going to survive a lot better. You're not going to die half as much. But the second you start to get to good gear, the second you're pretty tanky, I would suggest switching to, you know, Annihilation. But early game, definitely Mantra of Salvation Agility will be better. In terms of what we're using here, this is Blinding Flash. Okay, so the main reason Blinding Flash is used is because we're using the Laws of Seth in our cube. We'll be going over that in a bit. Okay, and this is to get your spirit back. So every time you blind, you're going to get 150 spirit back. On top of that, it also blinds the enemies so they can't hit you, which is, I mean, it's decent. But mainly, you get the 29% damage buff. Okay, so remember, this is damage increased by skills. So this just adds with the GNK, your boots, it adds some momentum. It's not multiplier or anything, but, you know, it damages damage. Okay, Sweeping Wind in a Storm. Sweeping Wind doesn't do any damage, so it doesn't matter what rune you choose. This one simply gives you spirit back, which is utility, and it makes it better than the other runes. I mean, if you were really, like, you know, if you really were playing hardcore and you wanted a min-max, maybe you could use the freeze. But, I mean, if anything's living for more than 3 seconds, you're not really doing your job right. In my opinion, it's just best to go in a Storm just for the extra spirit gain. Although spirit is not really too much of an issue with this build. In terms of dashing strike runes, so Way of the Falling Star just gives you an extra 20% movement speed every time you dash. You can swap this out to Radiance. It's viable. 15% attack speed means you can kick faster. Also means you can drop your Sweeping Wind stacks faster. And that's simply the reason why I don't use it. Because it's yeah, if you control and you're really deliberate with your kicks, you can maintain your stacks properly. But I don't know, I find that this utility of being able to run a little bit faster, because there is a bit of downtime between each dash where your character does run a bit. I feel like you're getting more value out of the movement speed. But definitely you can use Radiance, and if you're playing hardcore, you can use Blinding Speed for the extra dodge, extra survivability. We're then using Epiphany Desert Shroud. This is just to keep your character alive, right? We're not using Gold Wrap. We haven't got a way to make us invulnerable. You know, having Desert Shroud all the time is amazing, and having Epiphany all the time is amazing. It basically means, yeah, we get a bit of Spirit back, 20 per second, and on top of that, we also get the 50% damage reduction and the immunity to crowd control, you know, impairing effects. So it's really, really nice. Passive skills, we're using Beacon of Utah, 20% CDR, gives us more mobility, gives us more uptime and all our things, like, you know, gives us more spirit. It's basically just, it's just amazing, guys. 20 CDR and a talent, oh my god, it's so OP. Okay, Harmony, if you don't know how Harmony works, it's not that complicated. Just stack secondary resistances on all your gear. So you'll notice if you look at my gear, you know, physical rares, physical rares, physical rares, you know, you can't get secondary rares on your shoulders, or I would have it there, you know, etc, etc. You want to have secondary rares on all of your items, and what will happen is you'll notice that all of those secondary rares will contribute to your other resistances, and you'll get loads of all res, which means you're very tanky. So that's why we use Harmony. Using Momentum, okay, 20% increased damage for 6 seconds. This is additive damage. It's not insane, but honestly, if the other choices are just not that great, you know, you can use things like STI, like Seize Initiative, so that gives you extra attack speed, and that's going to be up almost all the time, but it has the same problem, you know, as Radiance. Okay, it means you actually kick faster, which means you drop your stacks faster, and it's not as spirit efficient, because, you know, it's making you kick faster. But yes, this is the highest DPS option. Exalted Soul is just a little quality of life thing. Increases your max spirit by 50, which means you can obviously, you can have longer between each blind, so, you know, you don't have to constantly worry about your spirit dropping. Definitely not required. If you wanted to be slightly more efficient, you know, you could just micromanage your spirit a little bit better, and then use something like Near-Death Experience. You could also, if you're running Mantra of Salvation, you know, you could run like Unity or Determination or STI as well as Momentum. But to be fair, I feel like this is, if you're a lazy man like me, then this is the best option. Okay, let's go over our cube now, so you can actually see what I was talking about before. So the blind, okay, it's proccing Laws of Seth. Using Blinding Flash restores 165 spirit, and that's why we have blind, and that's how we have the, you know, basically infinite spirit, because, you know, with Ingyom combined with blind, you can just spam it, and you're just constantly getting, you know, your whole spirit, like, you know, more than half of your spirit back on each press, which is pretty insane, right? And then we're using Vengeful Wind as the weapon. Okay, so this increases the maximum stack count of Sweeping Wind by 7, so it means you can have 10 stacks of Sweeping Wind. That's how you are able to maintain Sweeping Wind. It's really, it technically isn't required, but trust me when I say it's going to be really triggering if you don't have it. Okay, because your Sweeping Winds is going to drop like every 2 seconds, and you're going to be constantly reapplying it, which is just going to be, you're going to be wasting time effectively. The most, you know, the least triggering build is to use Vengeful Wind. But yeah, you can obviously swap this out to anything else, like a Furnace or even a Flying Dragon. We were messing around with it, you can. But at the end of the day, I always came back to Vengeful Wind because it just was the best to play. Okay, we then have Ring of Royal Grandeur as our third cube slot. This is purely there just to complete the SWK set. You can obviously swap these out, so you can have a Ring of Royal on Avarice Band in the cube, whatever, you know, vice versa. You can switch them out in and out. But just remember, Ring of Royal Grandeur has you're forced into something like attack speed and crit with dexterity, whereas, you know, an Avarice Band can roll crit cooldown, crit, you know, resource cost, whatever, crit area damage. Okay, you know, you can't do that with a Ring of Royal Grandeur, which means it's always best to have this in the cube. It's the most efficient setup, but it's not necessary. If you're just starting off and you don't have all the gear, you can swap them out, mix and match them. Okay, in terms of Paragons, Maximum Spirit is just a quality of life thing. Obviously, you know, movement speed, you want to be sitting at 25% movement speed in the sheet. So if you have 12 movement speed on your boot, then you want 13 movement speed in your Paragon. I have no movement speed on my boots, therefore I want 25 movement speed in my sheet here. Then everything goes into main stat. More damage, boys, more damage. And priorities when it comes to offense, I would say the best stats would be crit hit chance, then crit damage, then cooldown reduction, then attack speed. In terms of defense, you want to get all res, armor, life, then life regen. In terms of utility, you want to be going area damage, resource cost reduction, life on hit, gold find. It's pretty simple, but if I don't say it, then everyone rages in chat. But yeah, that's pretty much the guide, guys. It's really not that complicated. A lot of you guys are going to ask questions like, why is my sweeping wind dropping all the time? A lot of it is to where you place your LTKs. Just want to tell you guys now. So when you're using LTKs, it's obviously a 360, you know, attack. It hits everything that's behind you and in front of you, whatever. If you're attacking like here, okay, you're only going to be hitting like these 2 targets. If I attack here, I hit 3 targets. If you hit 3 targets, you have a higher chance of refreshing your sweeping wind. Okay, so you want to always try and position your character inside the density. Therefore, you're going to drop your stacks less, which is better. And on top of that, obviously the way sweeping wind works, it's only when you crit. So having a higher crit hit chance means you're going to drop your stacks less. But otherwise, that is the build guide. Hopefully you enjoyed it. There is a written guide. You can check that out there if you want to see the written guide. There's going to be alternative setups, and if there's like slight changes to the build, then I will change them on the written guide. But otherwise, that's going to be it from me. Until next time, guys, peace the hell out, and thanks for watching the guide.